We're back with more on News Talk Saga 960, the midweek edition of the Marc Patrone Show. Marco in the morning. David Crayden joining us, happens to be out on the West Coast today. And we got a lot of stories to discuss. Welcome, David.
Nice to be back, Mark.
Well, it is troubling to see these attacks on churches. It's troubling because we hear of these attacks on Christian facilities, Christian churches elsewhere in the world. But now we're seeing it in the midst of our own country, supposedly a Judeo-Christian country, and it's all being changed, I think, by this government and the people that are being allowed into the country, and I think it's intentional. What do you think?
Well, it's absolutely shocking, and I was just amazed to see a protest at the Bayshore Mall in Ottawa recently, where children were harassed by pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian. I don't know what they're in favor of. They're threatening children who are trying to visit Santa Claus. I mean, what is going on? And as you say, churches being attacked. What is the point of this? I mean, what is the point are they trying to make? Canada is a Judeo-Christian country historically. I think people like Justin Trudeau have made it a postmodern society or even a pagan society. But we are still a predominantly Christian country. And I find it outrageous that my faith can be attacked like this over politics. And I assume this must have something to do with the war in the Middle East. I don't know. What has it got to do with it? What is the point they're trying to make? This is insanity. There is no point being made here except that they're anti-Christian and they want to take down anything that reminds people of the Christianity in this country. And I just find this to be beyond the pale.
Yeah, there's been
I'm just outraged over it.
There was a fire at a church, absolutely destroyed the church in Alberta a few days ago, a week ago or so. Extremely troubling. RCMP are investigating, but they never seem to get anywhere with these investigations. You rarely hear of people being arrested or anything like that, and yet it just continuously happens. A church is being attacked. This Gladwell Heath Baptist actually was in London, England, and but we're seeing it all over the Western world. And we're seeing it, I believe, as a direct result of the people that are being brought into the country. I mean, I don't want to paint a broad brush here, but let's call it what it is. It wouldn't be happening if the demographic nature of the countries weren't being skewed and changed, I believe, in a deliberate way by the governments. Just this push to bring people over here whose values are radically different from our own. And they get here, and as soon as they get a certain level of power in terms of political power and demographic power, then the mask completely comes off, and they do what they did the other day, which is openly threaten others with death if they do something that they don't like. So our country is changing before our eyes, and it's a deliberate, calculated attempt to change it, and I don't like it. I think it's wrong, and I think we need to start rolling it back. I mean, we're seeing evidence of that in other countries now, where people are waking up. We saw it recently in the Netherlands when they brought in the Freedom Party over there. And so more and more people are starting to get alarmed. We're seeing it in places like Sweden. We've already seen it in places like Hungary, saying, no, thanks. We're not going to be overrun by people who don't like us. And they get to our country, David, and they spit in our face. It's like they're welcomed into our country, and they get there, and it's like, well, we're going to take it over. We're going to change it. We're going to attack you. We're going to insult you. And if you don't like it, well, too bad for you. And, I really don't like the fact that they're going into the malls, being allowed to protest in the malls like Yorkdale. I mean, you're walking around, you're doing your shopping, maybe you got your kids with you, and you got to put up with that crap. Take it outside like the truckers did. What do you think?
No, it's not. There's no place for it there. This is not a place to protest and scare children, and that's what they're doing. And I just find this mind-boggling. But clearly, we have an immigration minister who's talking about an immigration cap of 500,000 people. But that immigration cap isn't going to happen until 2026. In the meantime, we have unregulated immigration that is going to continue to escalate. And there's no guarantee that a cap promise for 2026 is ever going to materialize. And of course, you have to re-elect the Liberal government to get that. I want to see the Conservative Party of Canada take a strong stand on mass immigration. And they have not been doing that. They need to do that. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it is resonating with the public. I've seen poll after poll that is saying that unregulated mass immigration is bad for the country. It's changing the country. Too many people are coming in, and we need to have some kind of controls on the system. You cannot just open the border and say everybody who wants to come to Canada can come to Canada. It has never been like that. The Liberals have made this an exit point of entry for anybody who wants to get off. And I think it's high time we took control of our immigration policy, and the Conservative Party of Canada needs to speak out strongly on this issue. And they have not been doing so, and I think they need to do so.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And there are those who think that Justin Trudeau is already benefiting. There's this column in the National Post, anti-Israel propaganda is everywhere, and the Liberals are benefiting from it, politically speaking, in terms of the polling. Anyway, let's take a quick break.
You were listening to the Marc Patrone radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk, Saga 960.
We're back with more on News Talk Saga 960, the Marc Patrone Show, on this midweek edition of Marco in the Morning. I was mentioning just ahead of the last break that, according to some, this anti-Israel propaganda is actually benefiting the Liberals. I mean, there was the one poll that suggested that younger voters seem to be gravitating back to the Liberal Party as a result of this. I, for the life of me, cannot imagine that people would be that dumb of that certain age group. We're talking in the 20s and 30s to actually be dumping the Tories, gravitating back into a party that has been so destructive economically because of this one policy. Doesn't make any sense to me. And then some of the polling that I saw today suggested that that was an outlier and that people are solidly in the Conservative Party corner here. But, I mean, it is a political thing. There's no doubt that Trudeau thinks he can win the next election by, I guess, flooding the country with people who, frankly, have values that are radically different from ours. But you know what? Trudeau has values that are radically different from most Canadians, too, doesn't he? In fact, it was interesting to hear Pierre Poilievre say that himself, describing Justin Trudeau as, as a radical authoritarian. Let's listen to this clip for a minute, and I'll get your take on it.
What is that hurdle going to be for you in getting people who are not aligning themselves with the word conservative or the Conservative Party, but you think will go along with your vision?
I think it's connecting with people who are small C conservatives and turning them into big C conservatives. Jason Kenney used to say this all the time. So, I was meeting with a group from the Tamil community today, and they basically said, we're conservative on everything. Family values, they all run small businesses, they want law and order in their community, and they're heavily patriotic. But the party hadn't built a relationship with their community. So I have to go in one by one and make the friendships and the relationships, look people in the eye, and can make that personal connection so that they can vote their values, which are all conservative. The other thing about our coalition is that there's not going to be a Liberal Party in the next election. Justin Trudeau, of course, he's not a Liberal. He's a radical authoritarian. He's the opposite of Liberal. He's very illiberal. And so I'm going to be going to a lot of Liberal voters and say, this is not the party of Chrétien, Manley, Martin.
It's pretty obvious that that's the case, but I've never heard him put it quite that way. Justin Trudeau is not a Liberal. He's a radical authoritarian. That's coming from the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. What do you make of that?
Well, I was shocked he said that, because that's not the sort of thing you would expect Pierre Poilievre to say, but I'm glad he said it because it's accurate. It's true. Justin Trudeau is an authoritarian, and he's running a government that's more fascist than it is liberal. And let's face it, or it's more Marxist than it is liberal. But it's certainly not small L liberal, and it's not what the large L Liberal Party used to be. And I think that's very, very accurate. But I think Polyev is right. There's so many common sense. He likes to use the word common sense Canadians as a synonym for conservative Canadians. And I just recently wrote an article about that as well. That is really about people who think logically, who think in terms of common sense. And that's not what we're getting from the Trudeau government. There is no common sense to this government. They are destroying the country. They're eradicating free speech. They want us to starve because they are not allowing farmers to produce the food they need to. They're going to create scarcity in the grocery stores. And as we just recently discussed, they basically want to eliminate the automobile. Now, whether it's 2030, I've heard Liberal cabinet ministers say that the combustion engine will be outlawed by 2030. And now you're telling me that 2035 is the magic years for zero emissions from cars. What is it really about, though? It's about forcing people off the roads. Because everybody's not going to be able to want or afford an electric car. And we can't even service the electric cars we have now with energy, and we don't have sufficient batteries. There's a global shortage of batteries, and that's not going to change. So it's an unworkable solution. It's an unworkable idea. And Guilbeault is an environmental extremist. He's a proud socialist. I think he's also a proud Marxist. He's a Greenpeace stuntman, and that's all he's ever been. But he wants to punish Canadians for having prosperity. He wants Canadians to be unable to drive. So, I mean, we were getting closer to a communist country where we have our basic freedoms and our basic choices. Our ability to drive, to visit friends and family is going to be taken away. We are living in Soylent Green. If you've ever seen that movie from the 1970s with Charlton Heston.
Soylent Green is people.
We are headed towards Soylent Green because they want us to eat insects, and you bet they're going to go one step further than that. And we're going to be living in these cities that we cannot leave, that we cannot get out of. And it's going to be not just impoverishment, it's going to be serfdom. That is what the Trudeau government envisions. That's Trudeau's vision for Canada, serfdom.
That's exactly right. And driving, which has been such a boon to people's lifestyle and quality of life, is being ripped away by these people. I mean, they're okay with themselves having those privileges, if you want to call it that, but they don't want you to have it, and they don't want me to have it. And at the end of the day, these are elitists who think they're better than we are and more, evolved, morally superior to the rest of us, and so they get to do things that we don't. Mark my words, these people are just horrible. And I talk about this on my show, and I'm so glad that you joined me with this. I really appreciate that, David. So thank you. And if we don't get a chance to chat, I want to wish you and yours a Merry Christmas.
Well, a Merry Christmas to you too, Mark.
All right. David KRAYDEN joining us from Vancouver. And that is it for this edition of the Marc Patrone Show. Hope you enjoyed it. It's been an absolute blast bringing it to you.
Hi, this is David KRAYDEN from KRAYDEN'S Right and Stand on Guard. Join the resistance. Resolve to resist. Become a member of this station. I've been practicing journalism in one form or another for over 30 years. I've worked in print, radio, and television for a lot of prestigious publications and media outlets. I was an Armed Forces Public Affairs officer. I worked on Parliament Hill. I know how Ottawa works, and I know how corrupt the federal government can be. But you can play a part in opposing Justin Trudeau's government and Justin Trudeau's plans for Canada. You can become a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right resistance. Now, I urge you today, please support this station in any way you can. Ring that bell, subscribe, because that ensures you're at least going to continue to be able to watch these episodes. You'll beat the algorithm. But more importantly, I need your financial support. I hate to ask, but that's what I'm doing. I made a decision to pursue independent media because I believed it was the best possible route for me to take as a journalist and as a concerned citizen of Canada. So you can become a part of that. And at only $5, you can become a part of that on YouTube, on Substack, and with Buy Me a Coffee, a one-time donation. But I need your support. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. If you've already done that, if you're already supporting the station, thank you. But if you haven't, make that decision today